Hi everybody, it's Ron. This is my first stream. I wanted to talk about the news a little bit, give a little context to the news. It'll be imperfect, but I think nowadays lots of articles and headlines appear and we never hear anything about what maybe some of the background is. And I don't know all the answers, so and I'm not an expert, so I'll be asking some questions maybe about what some of these things mean. Because when I read the headlines nowadays, it's just like, that's some more stuff happening. The same stuff that's always happened. So the source I chose for this is the dreaded Drudge report. Now, if those of you who are not in the United States don't know, this is simply one page on the internet, and it's made up like an old-timey newspaper headlines, and it's never changed since it started in the 90s. It first became reviled, I think, because of the Bill Clinton-Monica Lewinsky thing. There was sort of a tacit agreement in the media, the mainstream media at the time, which was the only thing that was considered media. The net was not considered media, and they basically were not going to print or discuss these affairs of the president. And Drudge report, not only, I think he broke the story, but he kept day after day reposting stuff about it, and he made it a big deal so that the regular media had to grudgingly start to cover it. Beyond that, it certainly has always had a sort of a right-wing leaning, and almost, I would say, even more than that, a kind of panicky leaning. So these are all the most attention-grabbing headlines, interesting headlines. Back when it started, there wasn't a name for it, but these are kind of clickbaity sort of things. So despite how people might revile it, as we probably all know if you're involved in the news media, a lot of people in the big media across the world go to Drudge to get a collection of headlines of things that might be going on and that might be interesting to their audience. So no matter how you feel about it, it's sort of, it's made its place, and its simple place with just the look of it. It's just links. Very rarely is there original reporting already. I hate that picture of Brittany with the knife. I hope she's okay. So I just, looking at some of these things, it's quite interesting that Biden, as old as he is and as frail as he seems sometimes, is off to Israel to show solidarity. I mean, I think maybe these sort of attention-grabbing, the president comes to a war-torn country was first done by maybe George W. Bush. I'm not sure if how common that was with other presidents, but certainly we saw with George W. Bush, Obama, probably Trump, and certainly with Biden, these sort of stunt things where they go, surprisingly, maybe with no advanced warning, and they just arrive there. And it's a big deal in the press, gets a lot of headlines. And again, all of this stuff in the last week has completely blown Ukraine right off the headlines. You see how Drudge does, there are links to stories, but he gives it a good old-fashioned headline, powder keg. You can imagine something from the 20s or 30s with a giant font there with the headline. And all this stuff with the growing hostility in America, where people are battling over. Certainly there's a new sort of more liberal, on one side, group of people who are willing to condemn Israel. And some of the right-wingers, too, are anti-war and just don't want to get involved. And, certainly, Israel is the is the one democracy out there, and they've really bent over backwards over the years trying to come to some peace agreement. And the situation in Gaza isn't like it's the Palestinian Authority. Hamas is an organization that conducted a coup and took over. The regular Palestinian Authority is still in control in the West Bank and seems to be cooperating with Israel, and it's not an issue where Hamas has gotten in there and are able to attack Israel with impunity. And the last thing is, no, it's very little context to this, but if you want to know the last great thing that was done between Israel and the Palestinians, you got to go back to the last days of Bill Clinton again, when he worked real hard. I think he was trying to get over the shame and the craziness of the Monica Lewinsky thing. So he, in his final days, he sat down with everybody and he tried to bring them together. It was the Israeli Prime Minister, I can't remember, and Yasser Arafat. And they basically had a deal all set up that gave the Palestinians what they wanted and final things and giving the land, and it was all going to be finished and set just like the rest of that region wanted, and Yasser Arafat would not sign. So that's always been a big deal. If you want the biggest God-level view of the Palestinian situation, you just kind of say they've been cursed for some reason with bad leadership. You know, certainly has been provoked down there in Gaza is going to be a terrible tragedy for that area. But anyway, as I said to my friend, overall, it's kind of interesting, the Ukraine situation, because that was a new thing that I was not aware of. But this Israel-Palestinian thing has gone on, my gosh, for decades. And it was one of the first things I remember learning about in the world affairs. And in middle school and high school, I had to do reports on it. So unfortunately, to me, it seems like the same sort of thing again. And here we have shock poll. Large portion of Americans doubt democracy and view violence as acceptable, poll finds. So this is a whole can of worms. Maybe I'll get into it later, because I come from Trump country. And I do understand why, I think I have some insight into why people have gravitated towards him, but it certainly is, not to be too cliched, a polarizing situation in America right now. Maybe just to sum it up, I would say, you know, in the past you had little debates where people were trying to convince each other. Used to be a show on CNN called Crossfire, the earlier version of it with, I think it's Pat Kinsley or something, and no, I forget, there's some guy named Kinsley, and then there was Pat Buchanan, one for the right and one for the left, and they argued and spun, but it was more good-natured, and they were trying to convince one another. And as a viewer, you could say, I can see this point, I can kind of see this point. Sometimes they would concede, but nowadays people are just, in America, are just preaching to the choir. That is, they're just telling themselves what they want to hear. And the more extreme views, the better, because it upsets the other side, even if it's irrational. And for various factors, which someday I can go into, we have a situation where people don't trust the media anymore. They don't trust what they're told. And all of it's still only getting worse. So when we get to the next election, and if Trump's elected, which is certainly a possibility, I wonder how big of a powder keg that is. With this stream, I didn't want to talk about every single thing in depth, but just some points of things. I know some things really well and most things not at all. Yeah, see, here's 31% of Trump supporters say explore alternative forms of government. We have more Tesla. I want to get past that. Brittany. Here's, here we have China is exerting, flexing their muscle for various reasons. I don't know, my net's slow. Again, it's the same story you've been hearing for quite a while. It's obviously when you see the things that have happened in Russia, and you see the things that are happening in China, and you see things in the Middle East, the two things are happening. One is the United States is not as engaged in certain areas of the world as it was in the past, for various reasons. One is that less dependence on oil. The world is changing, and American appetite for running things in the Middle East in particular is abating a bit. So, and just in general, obviously, no matter what you say on what side of the political divide you're on, obviously, somebody like, well, I don't know, the current situation of politics in the United States, the age we're in, you'd probably start that when Trump was elected and Biden, both of these administrations, the world has detected a weakness, a way they can, it's like time to take advantage. And this is something that's happening. Here's Trump. For Trump, I'll just say a lot of unforced errors, and if I were a big supporter, I'd just say, I like orderly people, and he seems disorderly. And again, as they say in sports, it's an unforced error. It's something you do to yourself by your actions, and I'm certain that it's absolutely true that there's a lot of trumped up charges against him, but they're based on real things, and he has nobody to blame but himself for giving an opportunity to your opponents who are in some ways as crazy as he is and will do anything to see him fall. Here's guys with expensive houses. Drudge seems to like these sort of things. It just makes me a little sad. And then here's this interesting thing for lovers of true crime, this Natalie Holloway story, where they got an admission from this Vandersloot guy that he killed her and how he did it. I don't think, I read some of these things. It doesn't seem to be a lot of context. It sounds like, oh, he just did it. But I think one would assume that all of this is some sort of a plea, like that he was brought back to the United States on some sort of agreement that he would admit and this whole scenario with him and the mystery about Natalie Holloway's fate would be cleared up. Authorities like that sort of stuff. Here's military obesity rates soar. Last time I was at home, I got out the old video, or they're on video now, but they're the old movies that I took in the 70s on Super 8. And wow, we looked so skinny. We looked like we were coming out of some sort of camp. We were at the beach and all the people were skinnier back then. And something's happened in the United States. I think people have gotten wealthy, or more affluent, and other forms of food have become cheaper, and everything is fat. And there were those reality television shows where all the guys, Pawn Stars or whatever, everyone's just fat, and when I first saw Pawn Stars, I thought, oh, they're kind of making fun of these fat guys, and well, maybe they're going to have some kind of weight loss clinic, and this is what the show's about. But no, those guys are considered normal now, and we've kind of normalized fatness. And I was hoping for an example of fat person, but I just got this lady. She doesn't look fat, but so America's gotten fat. And when you go back there and you talk to family and friends, they're like, no, everybody has to think that everything's always the same as it's always been. Let's get past Brittany here. Bed bugs. I've had that attack before. Once I was in Chicago many years ago. So you see how these articles, none tackles environmentalists attempting to stop construction of religious center, all of these things. super clickbaity and would be super fun for the audience. And what many people in newsrooms across, I don't know, the globe, but in the United States, they do follow this for as much as they, as much as it seems to be a sort of a right-leaning, and it has a lot of influence, and it's, you probably shouldn't read Drudge Report every day if you want to feel bad, because it's all a lot of very dire articles. So again, with powder keg, Europe up security, rising hostility in America, homeland warning. So, I'm not too worried. So that's my first stream. I did it on an auspicious day. And I don't know if you got any comments or suggestions. Maybe someday I'll get some other people in here. I think there's just a lot of interesting news to talk about, and maybe add a little context if I know it, a little perspective rather than just hearing the things that are happening. So anyway, that's all I've got for today. Thanks so much. I'll see you next time.